So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a new tradition here at Temple Emmanuel. From now on, I'm going to be doing sermons, and before and after, Wes will do a song.
Yes, exactly. So, Elias, thank you for doing this. You know, you and Lorena just got back this week from your trip to Italy, and it struck me that folks are very curious about your trip in Italy, but it was also particularly the timing just worked out because Wednesday night and Thursday is Tisha B'Av, and we mark the fact that Rome destroyed Jerusalem, and here 2,000 years later, you're back from Rome. And you weren't just going for a fun, frolic-filled trip of, yay, let's do Italy. You saw Italy, and I'm sure it was beautiful and you had fun, but it was specifically a different kind of trip. It was Jewish Italy. So let me just start at a high level. How was your neshama about Jewish Italy when you were there? When you were looking at Jewish Italy today in 2023, how did that make you feel?
I would say that was kind of like a seesaw, all right, because we saw some vibrant Jewish communities in Rome, Florence, some parts of Venice, and then we went to smaller cities where there are only museums, and there are like synagogues that are unbelievable, gorgeous buildings, but there are no services there. So it was a mix bag, you know, in terms of the emotions.
Yeah, so I want to double click there. You have beautiful European architecture synagogue, and there's not actually a Jewish community there to daven Shachrit Mincha Maariv, to have Shabbos, to have Kiddush. It's a museum, synagogue as museum. Not to sound like a cliche therapist, but how did that make you feel?
Everything started when my mom.
No.
No, I think that you know, one thing that I should mention is that when, as you mentioned it, and we are about to read this, when the Romans destroyed the Second Temple in Jerusalem, they took with them, you know, the famous Arch of Titus, where you see the Jews carrying the menorah, and they took with them slaves. All right. But then the Romans were not that bad to the Jewish people at the beginning. And so a lot of Jews settled in Rome. And Rome is one of the oldest, if not the oldest Jewish community in the world. Let me tell you that I went to services with some of us in the trip to the Roman main synagogue. If you've been there, it's amazing. Some temple members were very upset because the women's gallery is up in the 5th floor. So they were, you know, not saying nice words. But anyways, I couldn't understand one word. One word. I'm a professional Hazan, and I believe I know some stuff. One word I couldn't get.
Why?
Because the traditions they follow, the way they, you know, enunciate the Hebrew, the melodies they use, is perhaps the oldest form of synagogue worship that we are completely unfamiliar with us.
And when you were there that night or that Friday night, what was the actual living Jewish community there like at that moment?
Well, it was kind of interesting. It was beautiful in its own way, and it's a magnificent synagogue. If you haven't been there, you have to go there. The fabulous part of it wasn't on Shabbat specifically, it was during the week, because the synagogue in Rome, for those who have been there, you may recall that it's part of what is called the Jewish ghetto. And they have like 2 or 3 blocks of kosher restaurants and Jewish food. And so we went with some of us on the trip. We went on Wednesday night to have there. It's amazing. It's unbelievable. It's like you feel like you're in Jerusalem because restaurants are full and people from all over the place come. We saw many Israelis come to Rome for that. And then my point here is the following: 2,000 years of history, specifically in Rome and in parts of Italy. A lot of things happen in 2,000 years. Periods of better time, periods of horrible time. You know, the Jewish ghettos in the Middle Ages, the Holocaust. So it was remarkable experience to go through all these places. There are some places like, for example, Pitigliano and Siena and Ferrara, that the synagogues don't work as synagogues. They are beautiful buildings,
But museums.
in museums, in the ghetto style. There are two types of synagogues in Italy, the ones who are unbelievable that you find in Trieste, in Florence, and in Rome, that there are constructed after the emancipation of the Jews that look unbelievable. And then the ghetto synagogues. The ghetto synagogues, the synagogue couldn't be taller than the smaller church, the smallest church in the town. So they are, most of the time, they are on a second floor, one floor only. Right. And so different things.
Elias, did you, back to the summer of 23 when you were there, did you feel comfortable and safe and secure as a Jew in Italy today? Would you wear your kippah out as a Jew in Italy today?
Yes, I would say yes. I would say yes. Yes. Lorena, what do you think? Yes. She's my prompter here.
Yes.
And I would say yes. I mean, I saw many Orthodox people, specifically in Jerusalem and in Florence.
In Jerusalem? You mean in Rome?
Rome. Well, they call it the Italian Jerusalem. The pasta is so good that you can call it Jerusalem.
Yes.
Anyways, yes, I don't think there are any issues with. We talk with the local tour people. The ones who are in Rome. We have specifically a woman who is part of the Roman Jewish community, and she gave us the tour. And she says that it's pretty safe in Italy these days.
And being in Italy and seeing Jewish Italy, what insights does that give you about Jewish life here in America? Like just the contrast between Jewish life in Italy, Jewish life here.
I thought this conversation was going to be easy. Yes. You're asking some kind of tricky questions. Can I talk about something in general and then specifically more about that? So let me frame the trip, how the trip went, because you perhaps want to know that. So we were 16 Temple Emmanuel members who joined 25 other American Jews from different parts of the country, and we were all together in a bus going together from cities to one city to the other. And with us we had an historian. Professor Berg, he teaches Holocaust studies at Union College in New York. So we learn along the way also about Jewish history, what was happening in the world in different eras and different times. And you hear things like, for example, that when Mussolini got into the power, a substantial amount of the Jewish community were in favor of him. Things that you never imagined that would have happened, who was an ally of Hitler. Then ended up being a horrible thing, and he joined the Allies, but at the beginning a lot of the Jewish people supported him. And you have so many times in history, let's not forget, throughout Italy you go and you see that in the majority of cities the Jewish people were in ghettos for 350 years. They could go out at night, go out during the day, and most of them were bankers because that was the only thing that the church would allow the Jewish people to do. But they had to come at night, and the doors will be shut, and they will be closed. And then every synagogue you go, it's either Sephardic or Italian Rite, like the Rome, but they are Orthodox. So women sit upstairs or on the side. It's not like here. We don't have they don't have a luxury that we have. So many Jewish people, so many synagogues. To that one, I don't go. They don't have that luxury. So it's much easier to be here in America as a Jew, obviously.
And you went with Michelle and a bunch of folks from our shul on March of the Living before the pandemic. What's the emotional timbre of a Jewish sites trip in Europe today as compared to March of the Living? When you see the ghettos and you see synagogues as a museum,
I think that although the World War II and the Holocaust happened in Europe, I think that it's very different experience of the Italian Jews and the experience of the Poland Jews. Just to give you an example, there are many things that we can talk about it, but half of the Jews from Poland were killed. All right?
90% actually. 90%. There were 3 million before the war, and there were 300,000 at the end in Poland.
Well, it depends what sources you read. But you're the rabbi. You are right. I'm not going to contradict the rabbi. No, but only 15-20% of the Italians were killed, the Italian Jews. So it's very different from one place to the other. And So we cannot put the same. I mean, in Poland, you see the concentration camps. In Italy, there were not concentration camps. So there are huge differences between one and another. Um, but one of the things that I was thinking a lot during the trip is that you go and you learn about the Jewish ghetto, the Jewish people persecuted by the church. Then you hear about the Crusades. Then you hear about the Jews put in ghettos for 300, 400 years because they didn't have the equal rights of any other citizen. And you think about what would have been the life for them if Israel was already a country. How many generations of Jews we could have saved.
Yeah.
And also this hopeless feeling that your whole life you are going to be inside some walls and that you don't have any other rights like any other person.
Yes, thank you for that, because obviously this is a very fraught time for Israel. We're all aware of all of the intensity and complexity and sadness and drama. And if you read, Danny Gordis, who's writing now not once a week, but several times a week, he says that if Israel were a married couple, they would be in the lawyer's office saying, let's call it off. It's very sober if you read what's happening. He talks about how the intensity of the tension in Israel is cresting because reservists in big numbers are refusing to serve. And they're saying, we'll only serve in a democracy. And if Israel's not a democracy, we are not serving. We signed up to serve for a democracy. And the way this is headed, it's not a democracy. All of that is happening now, Erev Tisha B'Av. And of course, the Talmud's explanation of why the Second Commonwealth fell is Jews hating on Jews. And it's just so eerie that some version of that seems to be happening again. So I want to come back to your trip in Italy. How did your experience of seeing Jewish history in Italy, as you've described it, affect how you think about Israel today?
Well, I have to begin by saying that, I believe that traveling around the world could be wonderful. Traveling as a Jew around the world is not that wonderful.
Say more.
If you go on a Jewish tour and you start learning about the experiences of the Jews around the world throughout history, it's very disappointing and it's very sad. All right? And if you go to Italy just for the pasta and the pizza and the gelato, that was my case, by the way, you have a wonderful time. All right? You have somebody who takes you to a synagogue, it's a museum. Then you go and you see the churches full of people with the opulence of the construction and so magnificent. And then occasionally you see a statue of a Jew like Moses with horns. It's really, really sad, And again, I go back to the point that it's so sad to think about what would have been the everyday life of these people that were hopeless about having, they had the liturgy. They had these things about, that we are going to read in Tisha B'Av. Tzion alot tishali, and Nachamu, Nachamu Ami. They had that liturgy, but they didn't have an existence of Israel. And with all the problems that Israel has, with its neighbors and with the democracy and everything, we have Israel.
Right.
We are so lucky to live in an era that we have a country for the Jewish people.
Right. And what I take away from this, and just to connect it to Hannah and David's beautiful talk today, is that for all of its complexity, all of its challenge, all of the pain, and by the way, you shouldn't duck it. We should read about it. We should learn about it. We should engage it. Read the last 5 Danny Gordis columns from Jerusalem. It will break your heart. You read the last 5 Danny Gordis columns but Danny Gordis is not a lefty, right? Danny Gordis is right-of-center thinker who was brought by AIPAC for 100 years to talk to Jewish audiences, right? You read Danny Gordis from Israel today, it will scare you and it will break your heart. For all that, Israel is the only homeland we've got. Mm-hmm. And so it sounds like the emotional response of this trip is we have to figure out how to love Israel through this current moment.
Yes, no question about it. And I want to end on a high note. I know, Wes, that you are such a nice colleague and such a wonderful person, and you are afraid to ask the question that everybody's thinking. Cantor, in addition of eating pasta, pizza, and gelato, did you do anything else? And you are so nice not to ask me that. And the question is yes. I like researching about Jewish communities around the world, and specifically in my area about music. So there is a tremendous contribution of Italian Jewish composers to the world of Jewish music. Think about that in 1623 in Venice, there was the first ever published book of Jewish sheet music, of compositions made for synagogue by Solomon Rossi. And for example, on Friday nights, you are all familiar with Abu Ladonai B'nai Elim. Okay, that was done by Lidarti in 1700s in Italy. So it's the legacy of the Italian Jews that we carry around the world with us throughout, different Jewish communities.
Elias, thank you. Last question for you. Given all the complexity and intensity, and it's easy to be traveling in Europe, it's hard to be traveling as a Jew throughout Jewish Europe, would you do it again?
You mean to go into Italy?
Not to Italy, but to another place in Jewish Europe where you're going to see museums that used to be synagogues. Would you do it again?
Definitely, because I believe that I don't think that these people live in vain. It's like paying tribute to them and trying to, to begin with, knowledge. Knowledge is wonderful. And experiencing other communities, how they were influenced by the locals, how they were influenced by the political, socioeconomic situations, is fantastic. And there's so much that we can, extract from the experiences there and learn for the future.
Well, may the complexity of Jewish history deepen our eternal love and commitment to our beloved homeland in Eretz Israel. It is the only homeland we've got. And may the complexity of Jewish history deepen our commitment to living a vibrant Jewish life here where we live.
Thank you. Can I say something that I've been dying to say for 16 years?
Yes.
We rise for Musaf.
There you go.